Welcome to JC NERR and How We Got Here, the show where you get an inside look into the stories and experiences that brought each of our staff here to the reserve. So today we have Anna Caputo here with us. She is our Watershed Ambassador that we are hosting for 2019 and 2020. Now we will learn a little bit more about what this position means to her as well as the science community in just a little while, because it might be a weird term, Watershed Ambassador. We don't really know what that means, but we will learn soon. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we can't wait to learn about your story and how you got to us.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
All right, so let's get started. So, all the way back to when you grew up, did you grow up in an area that is within the borders of our reserve, or did you grow up somewhere outside of that?
So I grew up within New Jersey, but not in South Jersey. So this area is a little bit out of my element, just in terms of familiarizing myself with it.
So where in New Jersey did you grow up?
The north.
Like north, like in the mountains north.
Mountains, I'm doing air quotes for those of you listening. So I was in the rocky, hilly part of New Jersey. My hometown of Midland Park is about 30 minutes north of New York City and about 20 minutes away from the New York State border.
Okay, so all the way up in that very far reaches of New Jersey.
Yeah.
What were the habitats like? What was the ecosystem like where you really grew up?
Yeah, so the ecosystem mostly is a lot of oak maple forests. Down here we have a lot of pitch pine because it's the pinelands, and also like cedar forests as well. New Jersey, for being as small as it is very diverse. And there's really those two major ecosystems that are kind of colliding, which are like the southern low gradient pinelands and then the northern rocky bottom kind of stream areas and the more mountainous forests. So I was up there.
Now, because I know within our reserve, we also have a lot of coastal areas.
Yeah.
Now, when you were growing, did you get to travel to the coast a lot, or did you have a lot of experience with that kind of an area?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why I think I'm here, or at least that's what I track it back to. There's a lot of nostalgia involved because I went to Wildwood every year since I was 2 every summer with my family.
Okay.
It was funny because my family is not very eco-oriented. They liked going to the beach, but it was more about like the lights and the sounds of the boardwalk and the people, and so I didn't really get a lot of place-based education about the wetlands or about the Jersey Shore or the barrier islands. So I did in 2016 an internship at the Wetlands Institute where I really got that place-based education I was missing about that nostalgic area for me, and that's kind of where I fell in love with this part of New Jersey and probably why I'm here today.
So that's a little bit about how you grew up. Now, when did you know, was there a certain experience or something that happened that you knew that you wanted to work in the environment, in the sciences?
That's such a hard question because I feel like it was very innate within me. I remember growing up and being a little kid and playing pretend and pretending I was a scientist and, playing with those little kit microscopes that kids get sometimes and just having a blast with that. So I was wanting to do something with the environment. I don't think it was till college that I really considered going into the sciences or to environmental education and science communication as well.
Okay, cool. So you're one of those little kids who you'd write, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a scientist.
yeah, or like environmentalist or something like that.
That's really cool.
Something naturey.
Nature-esque.
Yes.
So as you were going through elementary and high school, whether it be public or private school that you went to, did they have any kind of special programs or any cool field trips that you remember that you went on that kind of helped bring you here? Yeah.
So there's 2 memories that kind of stand out in my mind. The first was, I think, in elementary school. This memory is very hazy, so forgive me. We went to the Meadowlands Environmental Center. I think it's through Ramapo College. They do that, or they run that particular nature center. But I remember just going there and talking to a naturalist, and he was telling us about like bird wingspans, and I remember thinking in my head, that's what I want to do. Something like that. And then also I think that we started doing something with macroinvertebrates. I remember nothing about the macroinvertebrates, but it's funny because I do a lot of that now, dealing with those particular species. And then the other memory that stands out in my head was I had a really excellent environmental science teacher in high school, who in her environmental science class, we ended up learning about birds and plants and habitats, and it kind of was my first stepping stone to becoming a naturalist.
That's so cool. And I know personally with my high school, we just had like bio, chem, and physics. Like we didn't really have any extracurriculars or like some like extra classes that are more specialized. And I know a lot of schools, what they're doing now is they're having like, besides just like marine science clubs and like eco clubs, things like that, but they actually have like oceanography and these really cool specialized courses that you can take. And that's so great that you were able to have that.
So jealous and impressed by the high school extracurriculars nowadays and what they're offering. But yeah, I had a similar experience where I didn't feel like I was getting enough until that one class came along.
I know, I wish like
the extracurriculars were like art.
Right, art. Just things that were, but it's nice to see now, especially not even just the focus on making those kind of courses available to kids that are so young, especially because you're so impressionable at that age. You're trying to figure out what you want to do, especially if you're stressing out, trying to go to college. That's like the time. And it's so exciting to see that even we have mates that we hosted just a little while ago. That's an actual marine academy.
I wish I had gone there.
And you
knew about it.
When you think of like vocational school, you don't really think of like trades.
Yeah.
That's usually what I think of. But then actually that being a resource for kids to be able to go to a marine academy, like that's something that's so impressive. And I know we both feel the same way that we wish we could go back because that would be so cool. So elementary, middle school, high school, all of that. Now college.
Yep.
So what school did you go to and why did you choose that school in particular?
Yeah, so I ended up going to Green Mountain College, which was up in Vermont, small liberal arts college, but it had an environmental focus. So for someone who knew that they wanted to do something within the realm of the environment, it was kind of a good fit for me because no matter what major I ended up choosing, I could ultimately end up in an environmental field. So I think that's how I ended up there.
So what was the first major that you went with? And did you like switch it as you went or?
So first major that I went with was environmental studies, which is like the broadest of all of the majors. And I found that in college I was a little lost until senior year. So I ended up sticking with that major, but I just made it more specific. I tacked on minors and a concentration in there. So I concentrated in environmental education. So that's really where my background is and where my interests lie. And then found out that I really was interested in more science the end of my junior year, which is interesting. But I also have minors in writing and in theater.
Oh, well, I actually didn't even know that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Now, I know with, I personally went to a liberal arts university as well, and what's so awesome is that you were able to make it specialized, because I was bio. So that's like, just like environmental science, it's very broad. It's a very broad kind of umbrella term. And I know I focused mine more on like sustainability, and it was really cool to be able to have that flexibility, to be able to make these different minors and taking these certain courses kind of shape your major as to what you would want to be. Because I know a lot of times at some private universities, you're stuck within this really kind of strict curriculum.
Yeah, it's very confined.
And like to break out of that, it's a lot, like you have to stay for much more years and take much more courses. So,
and you know, I think it's good for undergraduates to have a degree that is very broad, because it gives you more opportunities to be flexible in career paths and choices. Grad school is for more specific things.
Right. And I agree, especially when you're trying to, even if you know, like, I knew I wanted to be like somewhere in the biological sciences, but I didn't exactly know where. So because I had that broader major, I could be like, all right, let me try this and let me try this and see kind of where I'd like to go. Yeah. So that's awesome that you had that same experience. So after college, did you go right into your kind of career path and starting out, or did you do a master's program?
I went right into my career path. At that point, I was like, I need a break from academia, and I'll go back when I feel the time is right. So I jumped right into a seasonal position as a marine science educator at the Narragansett Bay Estuarine Research Reserve. So I did that for a season.
Okay, so that's cool as you started to get, my apologies, introduced to that, like, the estuarine community and, like, that sort of habitat, because it's incredibly unique.
Yes, I love the estuarine program, and I'm so grateful I had the experience to work in 2 of them now, because the way they're set up is very similar, but they're very different places, and I love the mission of it, too.
Now from there, so that was a seasonal position.
Yes.
So over the winters, did you just have a job to pay the bills, or were you able to find other jobs in the field that were seasonal as well?
So after the Narragansett Bay Estuarine Research Reserve, I went right into an Americorps program that let me work as an environmental educator up in Vermont, actually. So a little bit of detour from the coastal trajectory of my career. And I ended up being an educator and raptor trainer there for about 2 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so working with wildlife, and so there was an avian rehabilitator there at our hospital, and then I was doing the bulk of working with the full-time resident birds there. A lot of them had permanent injuries, and we were training them how to be comfortable with people, and how to, like, step up on a glove on someone's arm and fly from glove to glove, and then fly around the room if you tap a perch. So that was a very interesting experience. I know way too much about birds of prey now.
So how long were you there with them with that kind of a program?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now from there, what opportunity presented itself that made you leave, or like where did you go from there?
Being in Vermont was great. Like, if you live in Vermont, I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this, but it's kind of like you fall in love with the state, because Vermont is very unique. So I felt like I needed to go back there for a time because I went to college up there. But I started wondering where the wind was, and where the salt air was, and where the ocean was, and I was feeling that nostalgic pull of the tides, so it kind of brought me back here. As the Watershed Ambassador. So trying to get back into coastal, I think, is what I'm trying to do right now.
Right, and you said that you had an internship at the Wetlands Institute.
I did.
Now, I know I was there with seasonal positions for a while. Incredible program, incredible facility. So what did you do with the Wetlands Institute?
Yeah, the Wetlands Institute was kind of my spark into environmental education. I think they do a very good job with that in their internship programs and their seasonal positions. But as an intern at the Wetlands Institute, I got to live in a salt marsh for an entire summer with an incredible bunch of interns and also people who worked there. The staff was incredible, and I got to learn about horseshoe crabs and terrapins, and it was that full immersive place-based education, and also teaching people about that habitat that really, I think, sparked my love for marine biology. And
I tell the first time I even met you that you would be such a great educator, because you are just so good with people. You're so bubbly, and you just have that passion that you can see right when you look at you. You can see that passion that you have. Now, so you had said the one position was with Americorps. Now, that is the same organization that has Watershed Ambassador. So is that how you heard about this position?
Yeah, this is my 3rd year doing an Americorps program. I actually heard about this position because there was another person who worked at the Wetlands Institute. His name was Jim Hansen, and he had done the Watershed Ambassador program after a summer of working with the nature camp there, and that's how I kind of heard about the program. And I always kept it in the back of my head, and then when I was done, I thought I'd apply because it would be a good excuse for me to move back to the ocean.
Now, tell us a little bit more, because I know a couple years ago I had no idea what Watershed Ambassador meant, and I probably guarantee that some of our viewers don't know what that, or our listeners don't know what that means as well. So what kind of encompasses
term. So first off, watershed. Let's talk about watersheds, because it's important that everyone has a definition of it. It's not a shed in your backyard in which water is held. So that's kind of what the name sounds like. It talks about the topography of the land. So it's an area of land in which water drains into one common body of water. So if it rains on that land, where the water falls and goes into one place. So for the Mullica River watershed, when rain falls largely within the Pine Barrens, there's this boundary layer that has to do with the high points and low points on the map. It's all going to drain into the Mullica River, which will drain into the Great Bay Estuary, which will go out into the Atlantic Ocean. So basically everyone lives in a watershed. There are sub-watersheds within our watershed. It's like a big giant puzzle. But it has to do with how water and land interact.
Now, do you work with other watershed ambassadors throughout like the region, or how does that work?
So now, more specifically about the Watershed Ambassador program, there are 20 watershed management areas within the state of New Jersey, and every single watershed management area gets an ambassador. So we're kind of like the Lorax for our particular watershed. It's our job to do education and outreach about watersheds and how humans interact with it, especially with the different kinds of pollutions that we end up causing in our everyday life and how that can go into the water. We also do stewardship and community outreach. So we'll work with partners within our watershed to create or do projects throughout the year. So doing that. And then we also do some water quality monitoring as well. So I go out, I'm very lucky because our watershed, the Mullica River watershed, is actually one of the most pristine watersheds in New Jersey, and actually in the East Coast too, which is great because this is New Jersey. No one really thinks about it being so pristine, but this particular one is because of the Pine Barrens. But I'll go out into the Pine Barrens and assess streams by looking at the macroinvertebrates that live in those streams, so the larval forms of flies and insects, and then also mollusks and crustacean. And by the biodiversity of animals that are living there, I can kind of assess how healthy those streams are and contribute to data sets that the DEP has been collecting for over 20 years now.
Well, that's incredible that you have, with this position, you get every reach from doing the actual data collection to taking that and making it into a palatable form that you can use to educate the public so that they really understand. It's not like throwing these big words around that don't mean anything. So really kind of making that connection. So that's incredible that you have literally from one extreme to the other and you can do everything in between.
Yes, it's a lot of work, but it's really great. I really get to understand a community very well.
And as far as I am aware, now you have to do this kind of large master project throughout your, I'll say call it like a residency here. Do you know what your project is gearing towards, or can you give us like a little bit of a sneak peek into what your project is going to be?
So I have several different projects going on, but for the Jacques Cousteau Estuarine Research Reserve, I am doing my host agency project here, and I'm actually really excited about it. It's going to be a BioBlitz, which is really fun, but more specifically, we're looking at gauging the forest behind the reserve in the marshland there. In case anyone is unfamiliar with a BioBlitz, I thought I'd give a definition for that, but basically it's taking inventory of all the species that live there, from plants to animals to fungi and everything in between. And just kind of assessing what is there. Now, the reason why it's kind of important and why we want to do a BioBlitz here is because there is a marsh behind the reserve called the Grassley Marsh, and it is a tidal marsh, or it should be a tidal marsh. Basically, there's a road that is kind of bisects the rest of the salt marsh and kind of the tidal streams that are over that way and the marsh that's behind our reserve, and it's connected via a culvert, but that culvert kind of gets jammed with things. So the plan is to eventually one day the reserve system or JC NERR is going to redo that culvert. So we want to assess what is growing here now so that after the culvert is redone, if anything different is popping up, or if there's less species that are less salt tolerant. Basically, we want to see how the ecosystem is going to change, or if it's going to change.
So, for all of our listeners here who hear about your project and they want to think like, how can I get involved, or is there any way I can participate? Is there a way that they are able to get involved in your project?
Yes, absolutely. So BioBlitzes really rely on volunteer participation because it's very hard for people to survey a large area in a short amount of time. So the more help we can get, the better. And it's really great because we're able to use a medium of iNaturalist, so that it means that at whatever skill level you are at with IDing species, you can still participate. So the app iNaturalist is a citizen science app that you can put on your phone, and it allows you to take a picture of, let's say, a mushroom. Will tell you exactly what species it is, or at least give you a pretty good guess. It's actually quite amazing, and it will locate exactly where you took that picture. So we're using iNaturalist to kind of help us with the BioBlitz to get people involved, or get more people involved. So basically what we want is we want people to come in on that day. Right now I think we're looking at the day of March 20th. I think that's the Saturday.
That may change, so don't put that down your calendars just yet.
Keep that weekend-ish
free.
So we're having people come in. We want them to walk the trail, anything interesting or even small and seemingly insignificant, take a picture of it, put it on iNaturalist, and add it to our project that we're going to put up so that we can kind of compile all of the different species that we have, as well as we want certain groups to go out and look for specific things so that we're not getting 20 pictures of the same interesting mushroom on the trail. So we'll have a bird team get up pretty early and go birding out on our trail, look in the marsh, look at everything that's flying overhead. We'll have an amphibian team go out there and try to look for where the amphibians are. We'll have, I think, traps out in the little salt pond out there for fish, so we can kind of look at what fish are there. And we're still trying to plan out all the logistics of those specialty groups, but people can sign up throughout the day if they're interested and around.
So I love to hear that this is something that not only all ages can do, but it's also a way of, because technology is so kind of ingrained in youth today, in kids of all ages, it's cool that, not necessarily calling it a lure, but like making it so that it's more relatable to them. Like, hey, come and download this app and you can come and do this, so that it kind of gets them here, and then this experience can kind of like spark that in them. So it's really cool to not only help with the younger generation, but also literally anybody who has a phone that can download the app can come and participate. And it's not something that you say is like crazy difficult. You just kind of snap that picture and the app will try to go through their database and ID it for you. So That's really, really cool that everybody of all skill sets and all ages can participate in this project.
Yeah, absolutely. And with iNaturalist too, you don't even have to do it at BioBlitzes exclusively. You can just, when you're out walking, also snap pictures and learn new things as you go along. It's one of my favorite citizen science mediums.
Well, that I am so excited to hear about, as all of these logistics work together and as we go into the spring, like how this develops. And everybody, just so you guys are aware, I will be blasting this all over our social media. So if you follow us on any one of our platforms, you will definitely know when it's coming, because I know Anna's excited, but I'm also really excited too, because this is going to be something really, really cool for us and for you guys too, to get to participate and just kind of immerse yourself in that world a little bit more. So that's a little bit about like what you're doing in your position here. Now, what are your goals? Like, do you have any goals of what you would like to accomplish while you're here? Not only just maybe like a personal, professional goal, or just maybe something contributing to the community, to the reserve.
So while being here, one of my main goals was to just learn about this new community and this new ecosystem that I'm becoming a part of or inserting myself into. I really didn't have a lot of experience working with the Pine Barrens before this, so kind of immersing myself in that ecosystem is something I'm incredibly excited about, as well as the Great Bay Estuary. I get very excited about very small, wondrous things in our environment, so trying to look at this this community and this ecosystem from that perspective, as well as networking and making new connections here.
Well, it's very, very sad for us because we love you so much, and you've done already in just your first couple of months of being here such a great job, and already having such an impact, not on just the reserve itself, but on the community around us. And so it's really sad to know that this is only a temporary position, but we really hope that your time here with us, you're able to really foster that and like immerse yourself into this new area that you're learning more about, making connections so that you can go from here to crazy, bigger, better things, and hopefully work with us again in the future. So we are so happy to have you with us, and thank you for joining us and telling us a little bit about your story and how you got here.
Yeah, thanks, Amy.